Hi, I'm Christopher Warnock of Renaissance Astrology, and today I'd like to talk about dream talismans and dreams in the Western esoteric tradition. So first, let's talk a little bit about dream talismans. We're going to focus on the dream talismans that Agrippa explains how to make in Three Books of Occult Philosophy, Book 2, Chapter 50. This is a really interesting chapter. This chapter has a lot of talismans that are house-based talismans. You can see that the source for the early part of the chapter comes from Thabediminkora's De Imaginibus, and has a variety of different types of house-based and other. Has a scorpion talisman, for example, which is very interesting. Now, one of the things that's very fascinating about these dream talismans that Agrippa mentions is that we don't know what the source is. So I looked at the Latin Critical Edition. That gives us probably the most exhaustive listing of the sources the many sources that Agrippa used, and there is no listing as far as the source of these dream talismans. So that's a bit of a mystery. Clearly, he's drawing on some earlier tradition, earlier source, but we don't know exactly what that is. So basically, the dream talismans we're going to be taking a look at are indeed house-based talismans. They have a very similar recipe. They're focused on the ninth house. The ninth house is the house of God, for example, house of dreams, definitely, and the third house, for example, is the house of goddess. That's opposite to the ninth house. The ninth house is also teachers, particularly spiritual teachers, and the Italian medieval astrologer Guido Bonatti adds the ninth as ruling visions, wisdom, and the foreknowledge of things. So again, very appropriate for the dream talismans we're interested in. Now, so the basic recipe that Agrippa provides, you can use the moon, Mercury, Venus, the sun, or Saturn. And basically, similarly, what you do is in all the elections for all these different types of dream talismans, you put a sign ruled by that planet rising, and then you put the planet in the ninth house in whatever sign that happens to be in that house. So, for example, with Mercury, you have Gemini rising, and then you have Mercury in Aquarius in the ninth. Now, there's some variation in some additional planets. I think these are not key in terms of aspects or the talk about being received. Again, this is using the medieval type of reception, which requires an applying aspect, and then that the planet be in one planet be in a major dignity or two minor dignities of the other, not mutual reception. That's very popular in modern astrology, so it has nothing to do with that. Again, Agrippa has some other interesting dream rings, and not surprisingly, these are also sort of ninth house based. What's interesting about those is that they're either Sun or Saturn, and they're exalted in the ninth, so that's one way of making the dream ring. The other thing that's interesting is that you can make it when the moon conjoins Saturn in the sign in the user's natal chart. So that would be fine so long as you don't have either the moon or Saturn afflicted. So in some ways, the general exalted talismans are more useful, those rings. So going back to our dream talisman with the sign rising and then the planet that rules the sign in the ninth, all of these use the same image, which is quite evocative. It's a sleeping man being carried by an angel. So what you would do to make this talisman is to create that image at the elected time, and then Agrippa says to write the name of the intelligence of the planet and the goal, which would be dreams and visions, on the talisman. So the elected time after making that talisman with that image and then the goals and the intelligence on it, you would also invoke the planet and intelligence, and then you'd suffumigate the talisman. Now, suffumigation basically is just lighting some incense and then moving the talisman back and forth through the rising smoke of that incense while you're invoking the planet and intelligence. And of course, you can get as jiggy as you want with this, as elaborate as you want. You could have special incense. You could have music. You can dress up in the appropriate costume. I mean, as far as you want to go with it, you can go. But the basic root of this is going to be, again, lighting. I always light a candle, light incense, and I use Japanese temple stick incense because I do lots of invocation. But of course, you could use something appropriate to the planet. For example, the sun, you could use frankincense. And then you suffumigate. And that consecration and the creation of the talisman need to be done at the elected time when all those factors are in place. So then what Agrippa says is to put the talisman under your head, so basically under your pillow, and it says, then you'll dream true dreams about whatever you're thinking about. So essentially, this is a talisman for prophetic dreams. So what we've made are the Sun Aries talismans. So what we've done is you've had the Sun is in Aries in the ninth, it's exalted, and then Leo rising. So that's nice. We've got a very dignified Sun, and on the front of it, you actually can't really see it, but there's an image there of the angel carrying a man. So these are our talismans are made in gold and bronze. Very nice, thick talisman, weigh about an ounce. This video is being made in April of 2020. So what you need to understand about Renaissance Astrology talismans is they're made in a very limited edition. You can only make a few at a time. So we won't have these in stock permanently. Likely this video is going to be around a lot longer than that. So what you can do though is to go to renaissanceastrology.com, to our website, look at currently available talismans, and then these are under Sun talismans, but you can just take a look and see if we have dream talismans, or you can email me on the contact page and see what we currently have available. But like I said, keep in mind these are very limited artisanal processes, and they're just not going to be around permanently. So if it's something you're interested in and it's available, I would urge you to go ahead and get it, because inevitably all Renaissance Astrology talismans will sell out, and as they sell out, also the price goes up. But something definitely to take a look at. So when we think about these talismans, the question then is, okay, well, what do they do? And that really, question really, like all astrological talismans, that question is really different for everyone. Like any talisman, the dream talisman, it's really impossible to predict what the effect will be for any particular person. I just have to say in general that many people are happy with their talismans, some are not. Those tend to be the people that are expecting instant spectacular results, the Harry Potter, or bags of gold materializing out of nowhere, or they're winning the lottery or something. Really, it's actually best not to even focus on results. I mean, that's a little paradoxical to people, because the whole purpose of this is, okay, I want something, so this is, and I'm frustrated with conventional means, so my last ditch thing, I'll try magic, which I don't really believe in, but if it works, okay, great. That's a kind of a bad mindset. Really, the key with at least the type of astrological magic that I do, the type of practice I do, is building up the long-term relationship with these spirits. And being willing to put the time in, and then being very open to what the angels, the celestial angels, are going to provide to you. Now, paradoxically, if you're not focused on results, if you're willing to put in the time for a relationship, then those are the people that tend to get the best results. That's, like I said, an interesting paradox. If you're totally focused on results, sometimes it could even block you from getting them. So again, very interesting to work with. Something that if you sort of think, oh, this is exciting, it's fascinating, I would try it. If you're looking for something that's guaranteed, then I don't recommend it. And I actually spend a significant amount of time telling people not to buy talismans. If people come in with unrealistic expectations, or looking, like I said, for a guarantee, or exactly what's going to happen, well, then maybe getting an astrological talisman is not the best for you. But if you're interested in this, and as a deeper spiritual quest, if you're open to what the spirits will give you and willing to put the time in, then it can be kind of quite amazing, the results. And certainly people are very happy with their talismans in many cases. So let me talk a little bit about my experience with these talismans. I made a paper version of this talisman, and then I was able to help me with lucid dreaming. So, and I've had other people say to me, yes, these talismans are effective for lucid dreaming. So it's interesting because, Agrippa talks about prophetic dreams, and we can kind of understand that it foretells the future. What's a lucid dream? A lucid dream is a dream in which when you're dreaming, you're aware that you're dreaming. And so that kind of leads us into a further discussion about dreams on a spiritual path, or from maybe a broader perspective. So a lucid dream, as I said, is a dream where the dreamer knows they're awake. And that can be all sorts of variations on that. You can have a sort of a brief flash of awareness. Recently, I've been sort of having that, so as far as I've been able to get with lucid dreams. I'll sort of, in the dream, I'll be like, this is a dream, but yet I don't seem to be able to go much further than that. There are levels of lucidity, and I've had these before, where you're not only aware that you're dreaming, but you're able to then act in a conscious way in the dreams. So, I mean, the typical thing I would end up doing maybe be flying around. That's something to do. Another sort of strange thing that I've done before is go up to a wall and just sort of put my hands through it. And it's just like, it's a dream. So, boom, you can just put your hand through the wall. Very interesting. Um, so there's all sorts of different techniques for lucid dreams, for incubating lucid dreams, and then things you can do while you're dreaming. And there's a whole literature built up on it. You can sort of Google search that. Um, I also have a page on my website called Hermetic Dreaming that's got some very interesting. It's linked off of the Dream Talisman page, as well as under the Hermetic um, Hermes Trismegistus section. And that's got some links and interesting stuff to jump off. So definitely worthwhile to look at. Um, it's interesting though, because a lot of the Western uses of lucid dreaming essentially uses it as a sort of almost like a super video game, or a way to help you with your waking life. You can work on your problems or whatever. And that's useful, but that's not all that can be done with it. Now, if you look at, for example, the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, they have a real tradition of dream yoga. And they're extending that sort of tantric practice of visualization into the dream state. And they're apparently able to go to sleep, and while they're sleeping, maintain consciousness as they go from the waking state into the dream state, and then do all sorts of elaborate rituals and visualizations and things like that. So again, that's interesting. But if we go further with the dreams, what's I think really most fascinating about dreams is that they have this capacity for allowing you to have a practical experience of consciousness and the nature of consciousness and the nature of reality, really. Um, so as I go deeper into this, I'm not trying to convince anybody here. I'm not looking for argument. I can't prove this. I'm just going to point it out. If it appeals to you, great. If you're like, no, that's ridiculous, well, then then it's definitely ridiculous for you, because it's an individual. It's almost like, do you like chocolate or do you like vanilla? And it just, but I'm going to point this out because I think it's worthwhile. And certainly when I work on dreams, my focus is on using them in my spiritual path. And what I'm looking for is a deeper understanding of the moment, and then also of the reality that I'm actually in. So if you think about it, we think of the dream as being created by the mind. So it's not real, whereas the waking life is real. Um, and the dream isn't real because it's, as I said, it's created by your mind. You're only experiencing it in mind. But if you think about it, your waking life is only experienced in mind as well. Is that every time you see something, and there's a nerve impulse, it's going to the brain, but then again, it's only appearing in mind. And you're not actually interacting with the physical reality. You're interacting with your impulses, and then ultimately that's put into your mind. Um, so that's kind of interesting, isn't it? And you think about the movie The Matrix. I mean, I really enjoyed the first movie. It was really trippy, and there's people written PhD theses about it. It's incredible. It caused a lot of thought, and was very I think people were really taken with it. But the problem with that movie was that this idea of waking up from this dream, was very powerful. And then what? I mean, they run around and they sort of, again, it's like a big video game. And then the sequels really weren't that good. They missed that, because this idea of waking up, what do you wake up to? And again, it's sort of like waking up to a dream within a dream. You think you've waken up, but again, it's just you're still dreaming. And that was really the problem with the Matrix. So if we think about this further, you don't have a body in a dream. You identify with it, but you realize in a dream that's not really you. I mean, it's a dream body. And so in fact, the characters in the dream are just as much you as that dream body you're identified with. And again, like in the Matrix, there's a scene with Neo and Morpheus, and he's talking about when they first go into the Matrix. And Morpheus points out, he said, this is your digital self. And that's really there's a focus. I mean, essentially, if you think about it, Neo and Morpheus are everywhere in the Matrix. They're not limited, and there's a habitual limitation, and that's called karma, really, essentially in the waking state or dreaming state. Our habitual sense of being limited, because our true nature is consciousness, and consciousness is not limited. And despite these identifications, this consciousness is everywhere. So really, waking up in the dream is pointing the way to waking up in the waking life. And that really what that waking up is, waking up to no self. And that's really getting weird because we can't even conceive of everything is oriented around us. It's all oriented around we're doing things, and I'm the doer, I'm an actual, and I exist as an individual. So what we see in the dream is that that's not really true, certainly in the dream. And that consciousness is really the same. The base consciousness is the same in the dream and the same in the waking life. So again, this is all going to sound pretty weird. It's all going to sound a little bit sort of half-baked. But the reality is that you can experience it. And I have had these experiences of no self and these experiences of waking up, not just in a dream state to a lucid dream, but waking up in the waking state. Now, at the moment, I'm not. I mean, at the moment, I'm still think I'm Chris and I'm right here and this is my body and everything. But at least have the intellectual knowledge and I've had the experiences of that can keep pointing me on that way. So I think, what I really want to come back to, though, is there's an incredible potential with dreams. And you don't have to get all whacked out to that level to find them useful. And that's why I've really enjoyed working with the Dream Talismans. This is a practical application of spiritual philosophy. It has some real interesting tangible effects that you can work with in a practical way in our waking consensus reality. But it's pointing us to a deeper reality in terms of the nature of consciousness and the nature of reality if you want to go down that path. So you don't have to, but it's certainly there if you want to do that. So that's what I think is really exciting about these dream talismans. I hope you'll check them out on the Renaissance Astrology website. If you're interested, I hope you buy them. If that's your thing, you can certainly something you can make yourself if you understand the astrology well enough. And this is the kind of thing I teach in my astrological magic course. So that's worth checking out as well. So very excited to have these available. And I hope, as I said, that you'll check out the amazing resources that are available on the Renaissance Astrology website.